Hi, my name is Daniel Orcanti, CPA with James Moore and Company, and I'm here with my fellow colleague and CPA, Elena Davis, bringing you this week's Biden tax plan update. It's just us two this week as John is unable to meet us, but he has a lot of faith in Elena just as I do. Last week, we discussed some planning strategies to consider before the end of the year, while the legislature was at gridlock, with the Democratic Party trying to resolve some internal disagreements. Moving forward to this week, there's been some progress. Lots of meetings and negotiations take place this week to try to scramble to meet the internal deadline they have at the end of October and try to pass the $3.5 trillion social and environmental bill. Elenis, can you give us a little bit more about what the meetings and negotiations that went through?
Yes, absolutely, Daniel. There has been a lot of movement on the Capitol Hill. There are still two senators, Senator Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, are holding their ground, with Senator Sinema refusing to finance this bill with corporate tax increase and individual income tax increases. And Senator Joe Manchin is holding his ground and not supporting the price tag of this bill, the 3.5 trillion price tag. Um, President Biden has been resorting to such measures as hosting members of Congress into his home. He met with Joe Manchin and the Senator Majority Leader at his house in Delaware on Sunday, trying to work up a deal and emphasize Senator Manchin's pivotal role in this process. The G20 summit is coming up this week, and so President Biden is leaving for international travel. There is a lot of pressure on the Democratic Party to pass this piece of legislation before the end of this week. So, Daniel, why do you think it is so important to meet this deadline October 31st?
Well, with President Biden going across seas, it's very important for him to actually bring some receipts and pass some of what he basically ran on and talk to other foreign leaders and say, look what the United States is doing, especially when it comes to like climate change and the social programs that he basically has promised. Another critical part of this bill is the House has decided not to vote on the infrastructure bill until this bill passes. So basically, that bill's on hold until they can somehow find an agreement. So very important for this one to pass so that the infrastructure, which does have some bipartisan support, so that bill is very important. And it's about a 1 trillion size, so a little bit smaller than what we're looking at right now. Because of the disagreements going on, especially with Senator Sinema, they're trying to find different ways to basically finance this bill. And also, one of the other ways when trying to finance is bring more income in. And since Senator Sinema doesn't really want to increase tax rates, they're trying to find creative ways. And one of the things you might have heard this week that they're talking about is focusing more on this billionaires and bringing billionaire taxes. And one of the great ideas they had is this called Unrealized Capital Gains Tax. You might even heard Treasury Secretary Yellen talk about it. This tax is supposedly just on the exceptional wealthy, and these will be people with $1 billion in assets or 3 consecutive years of income of $100 million or more. While there's still a lot to talk about with this, we're guessing that probably the tax rate would be about 20%. But this would be quite the precedent to basically have our first ever unrealized tax capital gains. For right now, it's only going to be on billionaires. Some other tax alternatives that they're talking about are basically excise tax on stockbacks, and another really big one is a 15% minimum corporate tax rate. So basically, for all these large companies paying no income tax, as long as they have book income, they're still going to have to pay at least a 15% tax. And that's a very popular one, and it has a lot of support from Senator Sinema, who has publicly talked about not wanting to raise corporate taxes, but is willing to do a minimum corporate tax. While increasing revenue is a great way to help on the spending, some of the other things they've had to basically discuss is what part of the bill they're going to have to remove, or programs they have to remove. Elena, can you talk a little more about what programs we're talking about removing?
Right, and so since the Democratic Party from the beginning has stated that they will finance this bill strictly with new revenue generated from taxes mostly, and not going to dip into more deficit. So since now there is less money in this bucket, some programs that originally were going to be available now will not make the cut. So the big one here is the 2-year free community college for everybody. That will not going to happen most likely. The expanded family leave to 12 paid weeks is most likely to only going to be 4 weeks. And another big one that would require a lot of funding is the expansion to Medicare to include dental, vision, and hearing is not going to be happening just because there is less money available now. The recently increased child tax credit that was expanded for 2021, and it was going to become permanent if that bill passed in the original version, is now only going to probably be available for a few more years at the most. So lots of negotiation, the alternative fundings and some programs being cut out. We'll just have to see if the vote is actually going to happen this week and what will pass or not.
Thanks, Elena, for your input. And that's all the time we have for this week's. Please check us out next Thursday at 2 p.m. for another update. There can be a lot of changes that happen really quickly, and we might even have a bill passed this weekend. Also, please also check out our website and our YouTube page for previous episodes. Thanks for joining us.